This segment's going to be on Melissa Harris Perry, and I'm going to be honest with you. I really was no Melissa Harris Perry fan. I felt like she was pushing that feminist bullshit way too far, and you know, that's just how I feel about it. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a feminist, but if you push it too far, it's just like anything else. You know, you push people being racist too far, it just ain't me. Being reasonable about a subject that is cuts close to home is one thing, but she just went overboard on a lot of her shows, and most of the time that's why I really you know, I'd tune in, see what the subject matter was. I would automatically know where she was going to come from on it, and basically just tune her out. But she decided that MSNBC was not going to tell her what to do. Now, there's two trains of thoughts on this thing. One of them is MSNBC has been preempting everybody and their brother while these primaries have been going on. And honestly, I got ticked off when they were preempting Jose Diaz-Balart, because I prefer his show to Morning Joe. And he hasn't been on in a while, but he's indicated that he's supposedly going to be back on shortly. Well, they took him off, and he's going 5 days a week. She got pissed off because they took her off and then asked her to come on, and she basically caught a hissy fit and decided to blast them. And now, not only has she lost her job, but she may have lost the jobs of the people, you know, that worked in her, you know, studio and production units when they got rid of her ass. But, you know, we'll see. I think this past Sunday, Joy Reid took over, so her people were at least working that one piece, and possibly, you know, Joy Reid will, I guess, or hopefully get the segment on Sunday, and we'll see. But anyway, here's Roland Martin's take on the whole situation.
We're putting together our annual MHP show Super Bowl segment, and because you know how we do it here in Nerdland, it gets complicated, because as always, football's biggest day is about so much more than football. This year, it's all about unapologetic blackness and the heightened scrutiny of a black body and vulnerability to police violence and displacement of marginalized people, and we're going to talk about all of that.
Well, guess what? That's Melissa Harris Perry, who hosted her show on MSNBC. No longer. She sent out an email to her staff last week blasting the network, saying she was not going to return to the show until they return editorial control to her and her staff. Well, this is what she said, quote, "The purpose of this decision seems to be to provide cover for MSNBC, not to provide voice for MHP show. I will not be used as a tool for their purposes. I am not a token, mammy, or little brown bobblehead. I am not owned by Andy Lack, Phil Griffin, or MSNBC. I love our show. I want it back. I have wept more tears than I can count, and I find this deeply painful, but I don't want back on the air at any cost. I am only willing to return when that return happens under certain terms." She went on to write here, first of all, this was a statement from MSNBC, Mark Kornblau. "We are proud of the diverse backgrounds and viewpoints of our journalists, opinion hosts, and analysts. We will gladly put that up against everyone else in the news business." But what then happened was they made a decision that they were going to basically terminate her in the show. She said yesterday they are actually negotiating this split, and her representatives are doing it. She has no contact with folks there at MSNBC. Her complaint was that they were interrupting her show to have more political coverage, which is paid dividends for MSNBC in the ratings. Now, what many folks have said is also, she also alluded to in her letter that there's been a change in the network when it comes to what you see on air, and also their focus on various minority hosts. Teray, who was one of the co-hosts on the show, The Cycle, that show got canceled. He left the network, even though a couple of the other hosts are still with the network. Also, you have Joy Reid. Her show was canceled by MSNBC. Karen Finney had a show. Her show canceled by MSNBC. Reverend Al Sharpton, he had a nightly show, 6 p.m. That show was canceled. He was given a weekend show airing at 8 a.m. on Sunday. Also, a series of black contributors are no longer with the network as well, and they've been let go. So let's go to our panel here. What do you make of this? She tweeted before the announcement. She tweeted this here, Melissa Harris Perry did. "Farewell, Nerdland. Inviting diverse new voices to the table was a privilege. Grateful for years of support and criticism.
Well, look, I've known Melissa for about 10 years. I respect her, consider her a friend. You know, she was the moderator of the Maya Angelou stamp unveiling that we did last year, Roland, and I think she's, but Melissa is an outspoken, powerful, strong black woman, and not everybody can deal with that. And the boys over at MSNBC, and I use that term intentionally, you look at Scarborough, you look when it used to be when Tim Russert, you know, Chris Matthews, that network shifted a lot, Lawrence O'Donnell, to be one of a lot more color and diversity. I used to be one of the contributors during the first term of the Obama administration, and it has shifted a lot and changed, and I think that's intentional because CNN has jumped up in the ratings since Zucker went over, and Fox, of course, is pretty much all Caucasian except for Juan Williams and a couple other people.
No, actually, Fox has more black contributors than CNN.
Really? That's
Yes.
interesting. That's a new fact on me. But you get my point. The visual optics of Fox are always, it is more of a Caucasian network than it is of a diverse.
Ray, did Melissa make a mistake going guns blazing by sending this email to the staff? You got to know it's going to get leaked out. The New York Times reported on it. Then she gave authorization for Medium.com to actually post it. Here's somebody who has tenure as a professor. This is really her side job. If you work on her staff, you don't have tenure. Those folks might be out of a job.
I understand the point that you're making, and one could argue that Dr. Harris Perry did come out guns a-blazing. I am not of the opinion that she did. I am of the opinion that she has a set of principles that were very important to her, and she was unwilling to move on them. And I understand the point you make about her staff. I do understand and appreciate that. I would like to believe that her staff would have other opportunities at MSNBC, and if not in the world of television media, though it's terribly difficult for people of color to get second and third chances, we recognize that. But I do appreciate and applaud Dr. Harris Perry for the willingness to say this is not acceptable, this is not going to happen to me, and if I must metaphorically fall on my sword for that, that is what I will do.
You know what? I mean, she made the decision. First of all, they put her back on the schedule, and she complained that she was not being used in political coverage, things along those lines. If I'm in that position, I'm gonna go back on that weekend and I'm gonna talk politics, yep. But I'm gonna still bring in my perspective, yep. And not say, well, I'm putting back on, and so I'm not gonna do it until I have full editorial control. Because here's the deal: when that red tally light comes on, you're live.
You are. And I think to your point though, Roland, and I do think that that's Melissa's style. That's the point I was trying to make earlier. Melissa's not the one that's going to back down from a gunfight. She's going to show up and be like, look, y'all didn't do this right. Let me call you out. And it gets back to the Oscars. It gets back to corporate America. It gets back to when I was a law firm and on Capitol Hill. There's nothing whiter than Capitol Hill, particularly when I was working there 20 years ago. And we have to be very careful of the toes we step on as black people, because like you said, once we shoot it and once we burn that bridge, we get blackballed. It follows us.
So here's the other question. Now, the other question is, will black folks stop watching MSNBC?
That'll be interesting, don't
I mean, will African Americans and will you see folks actually launch a kind of protest and say a blackout? What do you think, Ray?
I do think that we will see a change in black demographic viewers of MSNBC. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think will be...
No, what I'm asking is, do you believe there's going to be a public call for a blackout? Sharpton can't call it for it because he still works for him.
It will be.
I'm not sure who calls for that.
Right.
I think it would be implicit. I don't think we'll have a formal call where there's an organization that's leading this.
Should someone call for it?
I would be excited to see one. I would be excited to see that happen, and I know you have brought Jameer Burley on a time or two on your program, who does a lot of work around millennial activists.
Been on more than a couple times.
Well, nonetheless.
I got it.
And so she talked about millennials. I'd be really interested to see where young blacks do because of this, because that was for many young blacks, Dr. Harris Perry felt like their professor that they enjoyed in school.
But also MSNBC rode African Americans from 2009 to present day.
Yep.
Significant when it comes to those numbers. Sustained the
Black
network,
president going out
drove
of
its
office.
growth.
Y'all don't hear me. Black president leaving office is going to change a lot of networks, I believe, to go back to the way things were pre-2008.
Even though we're becoming a more diverse country.
Yeah.
All right, folks.
Yeah, and see, the problem with MSNBC, I can't see how they claim that they were interested in ratings, because their number one guy was Keith Olbermann, and I mean he had Bill Riley ratings, and if they were just interested in ratings like Fox is, because no matter what Bill O'Reilly does, he will be on Fox. He's their #1 guy. And if MSNBC had treated Keith Olbermann the same way, the ratings for MSNBC would probably be right up there with Fox. Maybe a little lower, but they would have damn sure been respectable. But no, the holier than thou MSNBC couldn't, for whatever reason, get along with Keith Olbermann, so they let him go. Then they let Martin Bashir go when he made an off-tune comment about Sarah Palin, and Bashir's show was a pretty good show. So, you know, as far as them really being totally concerned with ratings, that's a bunch of bullshit, you know. But they use the lack of ratings in order to change things. But MSNBC is becoming another Fox Light, just like CNN. And I used to be a MSNBC junkie, but basically that's changed. I will, you know, from time to time take a look at it, but I'm going to start scanning through all of the cable news networks in the morning going forward, and that includes CNN and Fox.